Welcome to the 100 Club. This is Tom, and I'm joined again by Richard. The first round of action is in the books now for the 100, with all teams having played. What did we make of it? Well, you're about to find out. If you enjoy this content, please give us a like and a subscribe, and we'd love to hear from you again in the comments section. Rich, how you doing?
Good. I feel like I've watched a lot of cricket in the last few days, and there's even more to come.
It's been belt fed. You took a little break this afternoon, though. You're looking a little drier than you were when we spoke to you at Lord's.
It was quite good. I still managed to catch quite a bit of the Birmingham Phoenix Manchester Originals women's and men's game. You know, we can chat about sunny Old Trafford this evening as well, as we will in due course.
25 degrees in Manchester, but that's not what we're here for. We're going to talk about actually the games that preceded that game, which I'm terming round one. I don't know if the 100 have come up with an official term for it.
No, game week one in fantasy parlance.
Happy with that. Okay, so it's the first games that every team has played. They've all finished their first round. I'm not going to be so crass as to put up a league table yet, but I am going to. It's a bit early for that, but I am going to pull up some headlines from each of the game. We'll have a chat around it and see what we think. So let's start with some of the men's games first. And so my first game I want to talk about is the team that probably did the most impressively, which is the Trent Rockets. I think they certainly had the most convincing win as they beat the Southern Brave. And it wasn't the big name stars. It wasn't Rashid Khan. It wasn't Joe Root necessarily with the bat, or even Alex Hales, who got a golden duck. It was perhaps some of their squad depth. What did you make of that one?
Yeah, I like the fact that you got Marshall de Lange pictured there. He was a late call up to the squad as a replacement for Wahab Riaz. I think he was on the personal recommendation of Lewis Gregory because he'd been doing very well down at Taunton, to Andy Flower to draft him in the last minute. And he bowled quick on Saturday. Yeah. He was getting up into the 93, 94 miles per hour. I particularly
he definitely registered 94, definitely 94.
Yeah, I particularly enjoyed the way he got rid of Colin de Grandhomme. They set him up with Marshall de Lange bowling right arm round, really sort of targeting, trying to tuck him up into the body. And de Grandhomme sort of shuffled across his stumps, trying to flick him away to the leg side and ended up missing one and getting bowled. But I thought it was quite smart tactics, and de Lange bowled very well.
Yeah, took four for bowling quick, body line, I think you called it on the Twitter account. But yeah, he's not someone you've always been that polite about, so he's done it right.
No, he showed what a good player he is, and we talk a lot of rubbish about a lot of players, and always happy to be corrected when somebody plays well, and then happy to admit I'm wrong. Yeah,
and for the Southern Brave, they really didn't get started in their posting of a total. James Vince went off just 2 balls for 0 for a duck. So nothing too much to judge on them at this point. I'm sure they'll bounce back.
Yeah, it was a difficult one because we'd had so much discussion around whether Trent Bridge was going to be the ground where the highest score was posted. If anybody was going to get 200, they were going to do it at Trent Bridge, people talking about. So I think we went in with very high hopes into that innings that the Southern Brave, who many people are tipping to do very well in the competition, would post a very big score. So it came as somewhat of a surprise when the Rockets restricted them to 126. But actually shouldn't come as a surprise to us because we chatted to Stephen Mullaney beforehand, captain of Notts Outlaws, knows the pitch very well, and he said he was going to be talking to the guys about how you go about defending totals or bowling well at Trent Bridge, and obviously he had some good words for those guys.
Just a ticket. Well, Jofra Archer probably going to come back very soon for the Brave, the Southern Brave very soon. Okay, next up then.
Just to finish on that one briefly, I don't know if you caught the pre-match interview that James Vince gave where they asked him about Jofra Archer.
No, I didn't.
And his response was, to be honest, I don't really know where Jofra is.
Good.
Just very honest, but kind of bizarre.
That is slightly,
yeah.
Okay, calling all stations. If anyone has seen Jofra Archer, please just point him in the direction of the Rose Bowl. He would be appreciated by that team right now. Yeah. Okay, second up, let's keep it going. Let's go for the first men's game overall, which is the Oval Invincibles. And I think we called it because we did do a bit of a reaction to those first games. The Manchester Originals, I think, got shown up for their batting. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so for the benefit of those listening on the podcast, Tom's major point here is the experience of the over Invincibles exposed the lightweight Originals batting lineup, and I think that's fair. Manchester Originals have quite a long tail. They have the very inexperienced Calvin Harrison coming in at, I think, 7 in that game. And it just showed in that particular matchup when Carlos Brathwaite was really kind of the lone batter at the end, trying to chase down the oval target, and sort of had to play within himself a little bit because he was aware there wasn't really any more batting to come. So
nothing more.
I think
and you contrast that the Oval Invincibles, they had, the experience of Sam Billings hitting 40 odd, then the Curran brothers both putting in a good performance with both actually bat and ball, just showing a bit of coolness, I think, in what was actually a relatively novel, clearly, and high pressure environment for a lot of those players.
Yeah, Billings played very well. I think was it 40 odd off 30 balls. Held that innings together. I would say one thing about the Manchester batting lineup. I know that we're focusing on game week 1 the first time round, but this evening we've seen them beat Birmingham Phoenix by restricting them to a very low score. And in that case, the sort of waiting towards the bowling attack has really worked for them in terms of you're basically winning the game with the ball. So it just shows
it's either that or just preparing an absolute disgraceful pitch at Old Trafford. But you are ahead of us. That is Tuesday's show, I suspect. So bite your tongue for now. Manchester Originals showed up in game week 1 with a little bit of a lightweight batting lineup in that occasion at the Oval.
Yeah, and I don't know about you as well. I felt Carlos Brathwaite looked a little undercooked for me in that game.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been an accusation leveled at him that maybe his 2016 success in the World Cup has hidden actually not always the greatest performances from him. We'll see.
Yeah.
So third up on the men's side, we've got the Birmingham Phoenix against the London Spirit. And the story here, Chris Benjamin, the youngster. Well, I say youngster, he's 23, I think, 22.
Yeah.
Just come out of completing an accountancy degree and was playing second team cricket following a bit of scouting. Earned a contract with Warwickshire, I think it is, and straight up into the 100 on the back of an injury, and has produced a pretty spectacular innings in that first game to get the Birmingham Phoenix over the line after a decent effort from the London Spirit. I thought that Zach Crawley's 60 was good, but actually the Phoenix showed quite a lot of character in that game.
Yeah, I thought the Spirit had posted a competitive total, as you say, kind of. Underpinned by Zach Crawley's 60 odd, but sport's all about narrative and it's all about players. I mean, what a story! Chris Benjamin, he's played like 2 previous first class games before that. I think one List A, and then he's played 1 blast game. Did well in those. Gets the call up to the 100. Comes in match winning knock, including a reverse ramp for 6. That was some simply incredible shot.
Lovely, yeah.
Kevin Peterson going nuts in the commentary box, commentating on that one. Fair play to him. Yeah, stepping up on the big stage in probably the biggest game he's ever played in. Yeah,
I think Moeen Ali did a lot on that in that game as well with the bat. Showed clearly what the class act of gave the captain's innings. I don't think either of those teams look like winning teams to me. I don't know. Maybe we should come back to that at the end. Whether there's a sort of a change to our predictions, but they looked decent, but we'll see how they get on for subsequent games.
Yeah, I should say from a Spirit perspective, Mohamed Amir bowled like a drain. I mean, when he was accurate, he looked quite threatening, but I think he had 6 or 7 wides in that game, which is far too many at this level. And also, I have to sort of question Shane Warne a little bit in it, because I read a pre-match interview where he was talking about the role that, look out for Mohamed Nabi. Mohamed Nabi's going to play a big role for us. And in the end, he sort of comes in with about 10 balls left and no real time to do any damage. So I think one of my kind of overriding themes for game week 1 is you've got to get your best players in at the right moments. Otherwise, there's no point, big hitters coming in at 95 balls. It's just wasted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think we're going to see some tweaks to these batting lineups. I don't think they've been reactive enough in that sense yet. The fourth game, the final game in the men's side, was the Welsh Fire against the Northern Superchargers. And that was probably the pick of the games in round 1. The Welsh Fire held on despite the best efforts of the young Harry Brook, who we featured as our young player to watch in that team. A tremendous knock from Johnny Bairstow. Probably just did enough, and it was probably the most entertaining game. What do you reckon of that one?
Yeah, well, it was certainly the most high scoring of the round. I think the Welsh Fire posting 173, and then the Northern Superchargers coming up 6 short. What sort of struck me about that game is that there weren't really big partnerships in it, but there was quite a lot of cameos along the way. So, Bairstow up top had 50 odd. Glenn Phillips went quickly. Jimmy Neesham had 30 odd off, not very many at the end, and that got them up to 170. And then obviously the Superchargers didn't quite have anything up front, but you had Harry Brook with that big contribution, and then Matty Potts towards the end, and I think Brian Cass as well was into double figures, got them close. And maybe that just shows you don't necessarily have to have the big partnerships. 4 or 5 cameos can be enough to get you to a big score.
Yeah, I think we should give an honourable mention to Kai Samad for his bowling. Really, really good stuff. Took his 4, and is it 4? 5? God,
yeah, 4 in that one. Yeah, but looked very threatening.
Yeah, and just absolutely taking the wickets at just the right times to hold back. And what we haven't seen in any of those games yet, and I'd probably extend that to the women's as well, is just 2 batters taking the 100 balls themselves, or really getting a 90 sort of odd balls and just taking a team apart.
No, we haven't seen that yet. Maybe the pitches haven't allowed them to do that yet. I mean, you mentioned sort of the the graveyard at Old Trafford this afternoon. Yeah. We'll talk about that more on Tuesday. But I think actually the pitches, with the exception of Headingley, all offered a little bit for the bowlers going through, which I personally don't mind.
I don't mind it. A lot of exciting cricket happens in lower scoring games. That shouldn't be denied. No problem with it. And I'd also probably not throw the blame at groundsmen at this point, because a lot of the weather considerations in this country at the moment is actually probably just baking out the ground a touch and causing some of the difficulties.
Yeah, it's been tricky with a lot of hot weather. Sorry, a lot of wet weather followed by hot weather. It's been difficult to create good surfaces.
Yeah, but that's fine. The cricket's still been good quality. So should we have a chat about the women's competition?
Yeah, please do.
And we'll start with the obvious, which was the opening game. And I know, again, we have spoken about this on this channel already. But what a start for the tournament. And the Oval Invincibles absolutely did their part, along with the Manchester Originals, of course, in terms of showcasing what this format can do. And it was all about Donovan Ninkirk in the end, with a tremendous knock to overcome some quite long odds, actually, and chase down the total.
Yeah, that's right. I think the Manchester Originals probably would have been happy coming off at halfway with their scoring the 130s. They had chances in the field, 3 big catches being put down. I think they would probably look back at that as sort of one that got away. But Van Niekerk did what she needed to do, and it was also a lovely little knock at the end from Maddie Villiers coming in number 7 to bring it home, including that huge 6 over long on to really sort of bring the equation down to something very manageable for the last set of 5. So, no, Oval surprised me in that game. They played well, and obviously did well enough to sort of win again today. So, 2-0 going into the next phase of the tournament.
I dare say the organisers of the tournament couldn't have been more delighted with the quality of what they saw on that game, in terms of the excitement and the crowd they got in and the viewing figures and everything else. It's done probably a huge amount of good for the tournament as a whole.
Yeah, I think it was an excellent showcase for the women's game. They got 7,500 in, I think, for that one as a standalone game. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's difficult to judge going forward because they're double headers. But, I was at Lord's today. There was 13,000 in for the women's game. 13,500, and I think that's the highest. But I mean, there's been at least sort of 6,000 or 7,000 in for each of the women's games so far at the different grounds, and I think that will continue because it's an entertaining product.
Yeah, so I think I did see, and again, forgive me if my figures are slightly off, but I think the 2 women's games today had a combined attendance of something like 29,000. If depending on who's counting, 29,000. The entire Kia Super League in a year had an attendance of 27,000.
Fantastic. Yeah, it just goes to show how good a level of exposure this competition is giving to women's cricket.
Yeah, and it's still on the YouTube Sky Sports cricket app. I don't know if you need a VPN depending on where you are around the world to maybe get on that. But again, there was a good, healthy amount of people streaming it on there as well. So it's a bit of international presence as well. Next up on the women's side, let's talk about another fantastic game, which was the Welsh Fire versus Northern Superchargers game. That doubleheader was really a tremendous ticket to get hold of, and the story was all about Jemimah Rodrigues hitting form with frankly a breathtaking 90.
It was a tremendous knock. You have to look at the circumstances. The team were 19 for 4, chasing 130. She was probably the last established batter at that stage. One thing I sort of talked about in the video earlier today that I noticed watching the two women's games live is that there's a fielding approach that's employed whereby 4 fielders are being pushed out on the leg side boundary and 5 are in the ring on the offside, as a way of sort of dealing with the fact that in a women's game you can only have 4 outside the circle. What Rodrigues did was that she was hitting through extra with power, both over on the ground and through the air as well. So by opening up the offside, she was thereby able to sort of access the boundary in a way that other players simply haven't so far in the tournament. And then once that happened and they started having to put people out on the offside, then she could go leg side because there was more gaps over there. So it was really smart batting. There were a couple of really deft cuts in that innings as well. Really classy cricket shots.
Yeah, she wins the cricketer of the round for me for that knock. Tremendous accuracy, placement, and power. What a great performance that was, and a very exciting game as well. Moving on then,
Darwin Milan for me. No, I'm joking. Of course, it's Jemimah Rodrigues.
There are other contenders out there, but that's my vote. The next women's game was that I want to talk about was the London Spirit against the Birmingham Phoenix. And this was very much a different sort of affair in that I didn't think there was a standout performer, although I put Naomi Datani on the screen there with a picture. Played well. Actually, that was a team effort from London Spirit to overturn what was a decent effort by the Birmingham Phoenix. But I think, with a bit of pluck, frankly, that they got there.
Yeah, I thought it was, you describe it well, it was a real team effort. I think, as people might not know, Tammy Beaumont is joining up with the team from game 3 onwards because of COVID protocols. She'd been to a family event and couldn't play in games 1 or 2. So Naomi Datani's had the chance to open the batting, and she took that chance in the opening game with a very aggressive knock that got London Spirit up to the rate that they needed to be at, and they sort of maintained that momentum through, even though they lost wickets. I was quite impressed by the partnership between Amara Carr and Charlie Dean towards the end, in that they really basically, it was kind of a tip and run partnership. They ran incredibly hard, put Birmingham Phoenix under a lot of pressure in that game. And then when the boundary ball came, they were able to put it away. But by running so hard, they kind of really made sure that the rate didn't get away from them. Yeah,
Amara Carr in particular caught my eye. I actually enjoyed as well the Deandra Dottin innings at the start as well. Did enough as the international star coming in, learning the game. And I want to talk actually next about another West Indian star of the game. Actually, all of the West Indies had a decent first round. Hayley Matthews did as well. But of course, Stefani Taylor did a number, I would say, on a pretty lackluster attempt and chase from the Trent Rockets women. And I'm sure you've got some opinion on that. But Stefani Taylor absolutely living up to the star billing and with both bat and ball.
So I think you're right that no partnership has really taken kind of the 90 to 100 balls by the scruff of the neck. But as close as we saw was probably Stefani Taylor and Anya Shrubsole coming together when the Southern Brave were in a bit of trouble, and they put on 70 odd. To get the Brave up to a decent total. Trent Rockets were sort of going reasonably well early on, but they just sort of seemed to get themselves bogged down, and then eventually lost I think Catherine Brunt was promoted up the order and the experiment didn't quite work. She was striking at sort of 60, 70. And they left themselves too much to do down the back end. And once Siver and Brunt were out in a handful of balls, it was always going to be very difficult for them. So I think it was sort of very kind of different to the London Spirit chase against the Phoenix, and they just didn't get the pace of the chase right at all.
No, and you might want to point a question at coaching or captaincy in a sense, in that they did peter out. There wasn't the aggressive nature of the chase, and actually they left some cards on the bench. Not least our very good friend Catherine Bryce, who I say our good friend, our former interview at least, who who didn't get a bat despite being a very talented bat. And,
well, she did. She got golden duck, but I think she came in.
Did she?
She came in for the last.
Oh, it was all but done by that point. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was literally the 100th ball, and she tried to smear it and got gold, but there was nothing to be done at that point. But yeah, she's highly rated batter, and she just didn't get an opportunity to impact that game with the bat.
I need to pay more attention to my friends' activities or my interviews. Right. Okay. So overall, 8 games of cricket, differing qualities, different characteristics to a lot of those. Is there anything that you sort of picked out on the stats side, or anything that you think is worth raising at this point?
No, I think we talked a little bit about what past scores would be before the tournament. We focused a little bit more on the men's side. I think I said I was talking around about the 140 mark. I think as teams get used to the format and providing the pitches are okay and not like we saw Old Trafford today, I think I would nudge that slightly higher now. I think sort of 145, 150 feels a bit like a kind of a good score on a good pitch. And for the women's side, I think sort of 125, 130 is pretty competitive that we've seen so far.
I'm not going to go digging through all our previous episodes to understand our predictions of what we said about anything, not least because I know, and I'm acutely aware, that a lot of my predictions are absolutely falling flat on their faces. But I'm sure you're adapting the model as necessary. We've got another busy couple of days coming up, and come the close of Tuesday, we'll be through round 2.
Yeah,
so
I think that by close of Tuesday, I think we'll have a fair idea of who the favourites are, who's really struggling. I still think it's going to be very competitive. I think everybody's going to be taking wins off each other. And like I said, I think the top teams are going to be finishing up with 6 for an exceptional team, but maybe sort of 5 wins. And I think the bad teams are still going to pick up 3 wins. So it's going to be ebbs and flows going forward.
Yeah, and for instance, in the men's table at the moment, of the teams that have played twice, no one's won twice. Clearly, that's slightly unfair on the no result affair today. But that might open a chink for, say, Welsh Fire and Trent Rockets, who have yet to play in the second round. So we'll see where they get to. But as I say, very early days, and we do think this is going to be very close. So plenty to go for. I've enjoyed that canter through. I think we've got a lot of cricket to look forward to. Rich, it's been a real pleasure chatting to you.
As always, Tom. Enjoyable.
Will do. And I will do one thing, which is say thank you to everyone who's been putting comments on the videos. I'm really appreciating those. We do try our best to respond. I've got one which I need to get on with tomorrow, which is getting back through the squad profiles and actually just putting the finalised lineups there. So if you do need to find any players, you should be able to see them on our profiles. But please keep it up and keep engaging with us. We're loving it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Take care.
All right. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon here on the 100 Club.